Hey guys, welcome to a new video, and this is my latest colored pencil tutorial on my Patreon. And this time I have drawn this strawberry with colored pencils. The reference image I've taken is from unsplash.com, so you can just use that image to follow along with me. This line drawing, along with the reference image and my final image and a list of pencils, whatever I have used, will be coming along with this tutorial. The size of the paper is 8 by 8 inches, and the size of the strawberry is around 4 inches in size, just for your reference. And you can use any hot pressed watercolor paper or Bristol vellum paper. I'm using Arch hot pressed watercolor paper for this. And you can see me lifting off all the excess graphite with a kneadable eraser. So I start off with drawing all the shadows on the pits of the strawberry, all these seed type looking, they are called as the pits. So always start with the darkest color on any area. So this is brown ochre from Polychromos. I'll be using only Faber-Castell Polychromos for this entire project. So come in with a very sharp pointed pencil, and I just draw all the shadow areas. So observe your reference picture very closely. Just don't draw the outline of all the pits. Just observe where the shadows they shift from left to right. So observation is the key in drawing realistic subjects. And in colored pencil medium, we always start with the darkest shadow tone. This is not the darkest, but I'll be making some of the areas more dark. This is brown ochre, as I've already mentioned. So before going in with the reds, I just decided to freeze off all my lightest areas on the strawberries, which are the pits. So now for making some of the shadows more darker, I'll be using this burnt sienna, and they are especially on the bottom part of the strawberry where the light is not reaching too much. And for the base color, I'll be using this cadmium yellow lemon and fill up the entire pit of the strawberry. And the lightest highlight is also of the same color, so you don't need to leave any white of the paper. This is a sped up version here on YouTube, but the real time full tutorial is available on my Patreon. I'll leave the link to my Patreon in the description box. Now for the mid-tone shadow, I use this green gold, and I go into areas leaving the lightest part of the pit, which is that lemon yellow which we used. Every pit is a 3D object in itself, so treat it like, so it has to have a highlight, mid-tone and a shadow tone, so that even those pits will look very 3D and realistic. So somewhere you will see that I'm covering the whole pit with this green gold. Right. And some of those mid-tones, they also look a little bit orangey from the reflection that it's getting from its surrounding red color. So I'm using terracotta on some of those mid-tones. And then I find that the shadows should go a little bit more deeper. So I'm using walnut brown on some of the shadows of these pits. And I again go over some of the other shadows with burnt sienna. And then it's also getting reflection from the leaves above, so I'm taking earth green yellowish to give it some green tinge as well. So this is the base I've given to all the pits, but I'll be working on each and every pit more in detail as I work on its surrounding areas with all the reds. Okay, so we'll leave these pits for now and we'll come back to it when we are working on the reds. So now I start with the other lightest color on the strawberry, which are the highlights. So I lift off whatever pencil line I can, and I'm taking pink Madder Lake, which is a pink color. And now, since this is a very smooth and shiny subject, I'll be working with very close circular motion strokes on this entire strawberry. So keep your pencils very sharp and pointed, and give circles, very close to each other. And for the white highlight, I'm just going to preserve those with a white Prismacolor wax based pencil. And also I'll be using a white luminance pencil to just blend that pink, okay, make it more smoother and also make it a little bit more lighter. So I go over the highlight area with this pink, leaving areas that are lighter than this pink just white. And here I have missed one pit and I come in with the same colors of the pit. Some of the highlight is also a little bit orangey in color, so this is dark chrome yellow. So I'm just going and observing the reference picture where all I require that color. And now I start on the flesh of the strawberry. So for the very deepest shadow color, I'm using this warm gray 5 from Polychromos, and I just go around those pits and just under those leaves where I find the shadow very, very dark. And then on top of it, I go in with middle cadmium red. Okay, go over the gray that you have applied so that they get incorporated with this red color. And then on top of this, I'll be going in with dark red so that it gets a more deeper red color. And then I come in with deep scarlet red, which will be a main local color for the strawberry. And I go over all those shadow colors also, and also extend them in all the deep red colors. So which will be around the highlights. So I'm working with very small circle strokes to get a nice smooth drawing effect. And then some areas where it's really bright, I go with light cadmium red on those red areas, and I'm also using scarlet red. For the very deep red areas, I take deep scarlet red, and then on top of it I use light cadmium red and scarlet red. So I work around each and every pit, and then I also finalize that pit using all those pit colors. I'm saying pit colors because all these colors that I mentioned earlier, like burnt sienna, green gold, lemon yellow, all those colors I'll be using again and again on all the pits. So here you can see me working in a very detailed manner around the highlights, and once I give all those deep red colors, then I feel that the highlight needs to be more darker, so I come in with more pink. And again, I'm just going to finish off all the pits which are in that area. For the leftmost highlight or the reflected light, I also use light magenta. This is again a 3.5 to 4 hours long video in real time on my Patreon. It is a sped up version, but I'll be explaining the whole process in brief so that you get an idea on how this medium works. So I refine the highlight area more. I make it more dark because now since I've surrounded it with deep red colors, I now know that that the highlight is looking too light. So I come in with more pink, and I also smoothen it out with white. And now I move into the next section. So for this shadow, I start with middle cadmium red, working around the pits and under those leaves, and I just freeze off some of the lighter highlights with a white Prismacolor pencil. And then I take deep scarlet red and I work on the middle cadmium red that I did, that is the shadow color, and I work around that pit. Patience is the key because we are working with the very fine point of the pencil, to fill up the whole area. But at the same time, you have so much control, and if you like the slowness of this medium, then you will love colored pencils. So again, I work on the pits with those pit colors, and I deepen the shadow more with dark red, and I continue with deep scarlet red on all these red areas, working around the pit and also around the highlights. In this entire strawberry, I have worked around the highlights because it is possible. The highlights are not very tiny, so it was easy for me to work around them, leaving gaps for those highlights. So for the darker shadow colors, I've used dark red and middle cadmium red, and for our lighter colors, I'll be going with scarlet red and light cadmium red over the deep scarlet red. And again, I just finish off that bit which is surrounded by this red tones. So this way I don't have to come again, with the pit colors. So I'm just simultaneously working on all the areas. Again, I am refining my highlight areas more and more, and to blend those I use a white luminance pencil. I've used three types of white pencil in this project. If you have been working with colored pencils, then you know that all these pencils are based on the quality. Like polychromos is an oil based, a hard pencil. Luminance is more of a dry pencil, which I like to, and it's opaque, so I like to blend with that color. And white Prismacolor is a wax based pencil, so I like to freeze off any white areas so that it's easy for me to lift in the end. I have lots and lots of colored pencil tutorials on my Patreon, and also a few of them on Skillshare. So if you're interested in this medium and you want to learn more in realistic drawings, then I publish regular tutorials every month uh, over there. So do check them out. So I continue working on small sections and just finalizing each and every section as I go. Initially, I like to work that way so that I exactly know my process and my layering method, and also the colors that I'll be using. So then the remaining part of the strawberry becomes quite relaxing, and I exactly know what colors I have to use and in which format. I mean the layering and all that. So this is the way I like to work. So I'm going in with this hard polychromo white pencil to retain some of those white highlights. Always work with a very sharp pointed pencil which will go into the very fine you know a tooth of the paper, so that way you will get a very painting kind of look and not a very grainy look. And now I just keep on repeating the process in the same way using those same colors. Using good quality colored pencil and good quality paper is a key factor in creating, a vibrant and a smooth drawing. So invest in good pencils. Polychromos are a great pencils to start with, and they are always my go-to pencils, even if I have, all the other brands. But I always start with polychromos because I know them so well, and my layering and my techniques, they work very fine with these pencils. They are oil based pencils, so all the layers will shine through. So since I'm a watercolor artist also, I believe in working in layers, and polychromos, they fit into my style of working. Then the next good pencils are, of course, luminance, which I always use in the very end if I want some colors to really pop out, because they are very highly pigmented pencils. So if you're just starting out, start out with good quality pencil, not very expensive, but good quality is very important. And even the papers, okay, try to work on thick papers, at least 100 pounds paper, so that you are able to give lots and lots of layers without any difficulty. So now for this reflected light, I used light magenta, because it's not completely bright pink, but more of a violet kind of pink. Of course, I'll be making that more darker in more layers, but this light magenta was a good color to start with. And around those bits, I'm using pale geranium lake, which is a nice pinky red color. So switch your colors according to the areas that you see, and then with a white Prismacolor pencil, I just freeze off all these white highlights that I see under every bit. Of course, I'll be leaving those areas, but in case I go over it with red, then it's very easy to for me to lift off with a battery operated eraser. So definitely, it's a very tedious drawing, not difficult but tedious, because you have to work around every of those bits, and but breaking down into smaller steps, and tonal wise also, it becomes much more easier to follow. Drawing fruits and vegetables, drawing or painting fruits and vegetables is a great way of converting your 2D drawing into a 3D drawing, because that will teach you, how to go about your highlights and your shadows and your low lights and all those things. Okay, so now what I will do is I will take my deep scarlet red and fill up the entire part of the remaining part of the strawberry, and then this is how the first layer looks. And then I come in with more layer, and I also work around those pits with those all those pit colors. All right, so now if you notice in the reference picture, the sides of the strawberry is a little bit of pinched, so you see more shadow at the corners. Okay, so I come in with middle cadmium red. I squint my eyes just to see the shadow color on the strawberry, and just go over those areas. With this, the you're helping more, the strawberry to look more real. And then I again take deep scarlet red and go over all those shadow areas that I have drawn. So once you establish which are your shadow color pencils and which are your mid-tone pencils, then it becomes very easy to finish the whole project. And then to make some of the areas more brighter, I use scarlet red on that deep scarlet red, and in this way I finish the remaining part of the strawberry. I come in again on the highlights. Now I'm using rose carmine, a little bit more warmer pink and a more darker orange on those areas. So this is my final adjustment stage on all the tones of the strawberry. And I also take my white luminance pencil for those brighter highlights. Now this reflected light on the left is looking too bright, so I come in with middle purple pink and just push down that color, make it a little bit more darker. But then I also come in with my pale geranium lake and go over some of those reflected lights just to incorporate them. And because it's not a very strong reflected light, but a little bit subtle color difference you can definitely see. And again, with deep scarlet red, I start working on all the surrounding areas of the pits and also the pits. And with white I just lighten the reflected light and also smoothen it out, and I work on the edge pits and also all these pits that needs to be more refined. So in this way I finish the flesh of the strawberry, and now what I'll do is I'll start working on the leaves. So here I've turned my board and we'll start working on the leaves. So as always, I just lift off all the excess graphite with a kneadable eraser, and I start working on the very dark shadow part of the leaf. So I start with warm gray 5, which I've already used before on the strawberry, and on top of that I use chrome oxide green for a very dark green, and this is permanent green olive for a brighter green color. And for a lighter green, I use May green and I go over all the areas of that particular leaf. Again, I'm working with very sharp pointed pencil to go into those very fine crevices. And for the edge leaves, I take earth green, which is a nice grayish green color. And with cream from Polychromos, I go over all the light areas, also blending in the process. I again come in with all the shadow colors and the green colors and finish off that edge leaf. I do the same thing now on another leaf. I start with my shadow color, which is the gray and the dark green, and then I take my brighter green, which is permanent green olive. I also take this opportunity to refine the red part of the strawberry, which is touching those leaves. So always start with your shadow color, and then for the lighter color I'm using May green, and then you start giving all the details. With white polychromos I'm just blending those colors because they look a little bit of pastel also, and I'm also using earth green for all the grayish green areas. So I come in with middle cadmium red to further, deepen the shadow colors. And now for this leaf, I can see very fine veins. So I'm going to use an embossing tool, the finest tool that I can find in my kit. And I just go over all the veins with a little bit of pressure so that those veins, they don't, receive any color. And then I work on the shadow color with this chrome oxide green, and as you can see the color doesn't stick to those veins because they are like depressed from the paper. So this technique is very useful, especially when these tiny areas where it's very difficult to work around those veins. And then I take permanent green olive, which is our more brighter green, and go over the shadow color as well as the mid tone of that leaf. And then with May green I fill up the rest of the leaf. With light yellow glaze, I fill up the veins of the leaves and I also go over the lighter areas. And now I again come in with shadow areas, making more refined shadows with warm grey 5 and chrome oxide green. And I again take permanent green olive and all the lighter yellows and greens as well. And I finish off that leaf. I'm also taking a little bit of black for the very darkest shadows. So this black I use on top of the green so that doesn't look, a very dull looking gray black. And now for the stem, I'm using light green. First I use a little bit of gray and then with cream, I'm going to fill up the lightest part of that stem. And now I just missed out this top part of the strawberry which was hiding in between those leaves. So I'm just finishing that with middle cadmium red and a little bit of green for the pit. And I start on the leaf now and I can see a little bit of brown on the leaf. So for that brown, I'm using the same middle cadmium red and then I go over it with green. And since red and green are opposite colors on the color wheel, when you mix those colors together, you get a nice vibrant brown color. And I do the same thing. I come in with shadow colors, the mid-tone colors and the light colors. Now this leaf again has fine veins, so I go over the veins with an embossing tool. These tools are easily available on Amazon. You get a pack of 4 with dual side points. So choose I have chosen the smallest point on this tool, and I continue drawing the leaf in the same way. I start with the shadow colors and the mid-tone colors on top of the shadow colors, leaving all the lightest areas, and then I fill up the lightest areas with the lighter green colors. Now on this leaf I can also see some bluish green, so I'm using some light green, some grass green. Okay, so nice variety of greens on those leaves to make your drawing look more interesting. And then I go in with yellows to make the lighter greens lighter, as well as in that process we are also filling up those lighter areas, the white part of the paper, with those lighter colors, so that way it looks more smooth and blended. For the edges I'm also using this earth green, and for all those hair like those hairy bits I'm using earth green. And in the end I come in also with black for the very darkest tone. Here I start with black, and then on top of that I go over with my greens, a little bit of gray green also, which is earth green. And this particular staple has a lot of browns, light brown. So I've given orange first, and then I go over it with green. So again, orange and green, you will get a nice brown tone. And the tip of the leaf is again red. So I'm using middle cadmium red. And with a lighter green, I just finish off that leaf. Now again, this leaf has a lot of veins. I do them with this embossing tool. Start with the shadow color and then your mid-tone color, and then on top of that your light tone, the lightest tone colors. Fill up those veins with the lightest yellows or the lightest greens, and then deepen your shadows more. Let there be a good contrast in all your drawings and paintings for them to pop up from the page. And in this way I finish the leaves as well. Now you can leave this drawing as it is now, or you can give shadows as I'm doing it over here. So I take the deepest shadow color, which is black. I leave little bit of reflected light, and I start going in very tiny circles, very next to each other, to create a very dark looking black. And then on top of this, I use a darker gray color and go over the black as well. This is coal grade 3, and as I move away from the strawberry, the shadow goes lighter and lighter. So for the mid-tone gray, I'm using this Payne's gray, and for the very lighter shadows, I'm also using this blending stump to just fade off that shadow, and I finished the shadow on both the sides like this. So if you've watched up till here, then thank you so much, and the full tutorial, as I told you, is available on Patreon. And if you like this video, then do like, share and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.